This
I
conference
just
will now
started.
be recorded.
Hi, this is Len Sierra for the AnCan High Risk Recurrent Advanced Prostate Cancer Video Chat Session, and it's July 26th. We are going to start with a new member tonight, Bob G. And Bob, I'm going to go through a series of questions, and you provide me with the answers and allow me to go through these chronologically.
Okay.
Don't jump ahead, okay?
Sure.
So what did you say your last name was? Or you just want to stick with G?
Last name is Gurmankin, and it's Gurmankin.
Okay, Bob. How old are you?
Just turned 64.
All right. Where do you live, Bob?
I'm in Philadelphia.
Very good. And how'd you hear about AnCan?
You know what? I don't remember. I just, in Googling various sites, I saw this and
Got
it's
it.
like, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. So tell us when you were first diagnosed and what your Gleason score and PSA levels were.
Okay. So I was first diagnosed kind of late April of 2022. PSA was 28.2. 18 months prior, it was 2.8. So I had biopsy Gleason. 9 out of 12 samples were positive. 8 out of those 9 were 4+5. 1 was 4+4, and all the samples were at least 70%.
Okay. And which institution did you go to for the biopsy? And which
For the
urologist?
biopsy, it was a urologist associated with Jefferson Medical Center. Dr. Levine did the biopsy. And actually, CAT scan and the bone scan were also through Jefferson, but I'm actually at University of Pennsylvania for treatment.
Okay, and tell us the results of the, what'd you say, bone scan and CAT scan?
Yeah, so the CAT scan came back okay. The bone scan had 6 areas of bone metastases. Largest is in my left shoulder blade. Next largest is the 9th posterior lateral rib. Then there's 3 small ones in other ribs and a small one on my hip. So I was diagnosed, high volume Denovo metastatic.
Right, and did they refer, I assume they referred you to a medical oncologist after the
Yes.
scan?
Mm-hmm. I actually had,
And who would that be?
her name is Dr. Naomi Haas, Haas. I actually made the appointment before the biopsy because I got the bone scan back the day before my biopsy. And, I knew by a little research that where I was headed.
Right. And this was a traditional bone scan. It wasn't a PSMA PET
No,
scan or Axumin scan.
no, just regular bone scan.
Okay. All right. And so what treatments have you undergone so far?
So the original plan was triplet therapy. So I had 2 weeks of Casodex and then a 3-month Lupron shot, another week of Casodex, and then they started me on abiraterone, 1,000 milligrams with 5 milligrams of prednisone. Unfortunately, after 5 days on that, I developed an irregular heartbeat. So I had to stop. I went to see a oncologic cardiologist who cleared me to restart it. It gave me a monitor to wear. And I was having less irregular heartbeats, but after 6 days, it was time for my first chemo. And of course, they do the blood work first. And here my bilirubin had shot up. So they're like, chemo is not good for the liver. This abiraterone's affecting the liver. So I'm off abiraterone at least through chemo. So I had my first chemo about 3.5 weeks ago, docetaxel. I ended up pretty severely neutropenic for over a week. I had my second chemo yesterday, and just about an hour and a half ago injected myself with, it's a bioequivalent to Neulasta. It starts with the letter Z. So hopefully that'll keep me from bottoming out and bring me back faster.
Okay, so you've had 2 rounds of docetaxel so far,
Yes,
and you're still on the Lupron, but not Zytiga or any substitute for it.
correct.
Okay, so have you had a PSA since late April?
Yeah, actually, my PSA went from 28 to 19.9 to 11, and yesterday it was just over 4. So that's I think, a pretty good.
Okay.
And
Yep, you're going in the right direction.
Yep, and my testosterone's been under 20.
Okay. And do you know if they're giving you the Lupron every 3 months?
Yeah, I'm. That's what I got the first, and I think I want to stick to that.
Okay. What about genetic testing? Did they do any genetic testing, whether for inherited germline mutations or tumor somatic mutations?
Yeah, so I have actually next week a televisit with genetic counselor. On my own, I did genetic testing through Promise. They
Right.
and none of the 20 things they look for came back positive. The genomic testing on my biopsy samples did come back with some interesting results. So let's see, I'm high on what is it?
MSI?
MSI is high, and I'm low on mismatch repair. So they think that's probably why I have such an aggressive cancer, but it also opens up possibilities to immunotherapy being potentially successful.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's true. Now, the
Any
mismatch
mutation?
repair is usually associated with a mutation in that pathway. Were there any other mutations they identified beside the MSI high?
I think the only other thing just had to do with it was the MSI high, the mismatch low, and the only other thing was the percentage of mutations. Um, and basically the TMB was high, 23 mutations per MB.
Right. Okay.
So it basically shows up as biomarker level 2, which is, and they say pembrolizumab could be useful,
Pembrolizumab, yeah.
and that dostarlimab could be useful for the mismatch repair. But talking to my
What was that last one?
I got to pull it back up. Sorry. It's the other one is the one that they came out about a month ago that 18 out of 18 patients were free of rectal cancer. It's dostarlimab, dostarlimab. That also might be helpful.
So can I ask the question of who did
Oh,
your
a
somatic
treatment. Okay.
testing? Who did the somatic genetic testing?
So Penn got these biopsy samples, or a couple of the samples, and they send it out to a lab. The lab is Caris, C-A-R-I-S,
Mhm.
Life Sciences.
Mm-hmm.
They're in Phoenix, Arizona.
Right.
So I have like an 11-page report, and I think the doctor
So,
has even more.
Bob, before I open up the questions to the guys, are there any specific questions that you have for us?
Not specifically for myself. I don't seem to have any mutations that could be passed on yet. My son is 31. With this happening, he just got his PSA checked, which is really young for a PSA, and he came back at 1.0, which to me seems a little high for someone at age 31. I look back, I didn't have 1.0 until I was like 53. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that.
Yeah. Larry Fish, we're getting a lot of feedback on your end, please. Mute.
My mic was off.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Didn't anybody else see Larry Fish flash on the
Yes.
sound bar there?
Yes.
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 Guilty, Larry. Okay.
Busted.
Anybody have questions or comments for Bob?
Well, Bob, I'm really just curious that they didn't find any mutations in any genes at all in the somatic testing.
Yeah, I mean, I had done 23andMe, several years ago, and was able to download my entire genome, and I ran that through a program called Prometheus, and it came up with some very minor stuff, 1.59% increased risk but the promise, they look for the 20 most common, the BRCA and all the others,
Right.
and it all came back normal.
Right, but that's germline.
Yeah.
I'm really talking about the Caris report, which you said is many, many pages, and it didn't show any specific gene mutations other than MSI and MMR
And
Yeah.
TMB.
and TMB.
Yeah, nothing else
Wow.
that it highlights the most, the only other
Wow.
thing that showed up in biomarker was AR, which was positive.
Right. Wow. No,
But-
no PTEN or TP53 or anything like that, Bob?
No, no,
It
no,
is
no other
interesting.
mutation.
It is interesting, and it's certainly worth discussing with Dr. Haas.
Yeah.
And it may be worth sending out a sample to another lab like Foundation Medicine and seeing what they see. Because most of the time, what we've seen here anecdotally is that men that are TMB high and MSI high and with a fairly high tumor mutation burden, they do have some mutations.
Tomorrow or take out the garbage.
Something or the other. It might
Laundry tomorrow.
10, TP53, Tempress, HOXB. I don't know. I mean, there's a bunch, but we would expect something. So it's unusual. Doesn't mean to say it's wrong, but it's enough to make us question whether they might have missed something. Now, the fact that they identified a drug, which oftentimes is used for, colorectal.
Well, it's for mismatch repair, but it just happened to be that they had that news of like 18 out of 18 were totally cleared with that particular drug.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, is it
Okay.
possible other labs do additional testing? I mean, it did It did show
Yes.
some things with, some minor variant frequencies, but,
Well, the answer is yes, the panels are different.
mhm.
I cannot remember the Caris panel, but I want to say it's around 70 or 80. The Foundation Medicine panel is 330 something at last count.
Okay.
But usually the 70 or 80 will cover the most important ones. But it just, like Herb said, it just sounds strange.
Yeah, I
So
mean, maybe I'm not reading this right. I mean, it does have like, check one, nothing, check two, but then it does say, go as I go down, CDKN1B, pathogenic variant, 8% frequency, um,
Okay, well, that,
JAK1. There are others, and then there's some with genes tested with variants of uncertain significance.
yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if maybe there are these things and they're just not very common, or just that the frequency is so low that they don't consider it a major deal.
I'll leave it to the brains trust of Len and Ben and Herb, but it does sound a little strange that there's nothing really hitting you between the eyes in terms of other variants. But
Yeah, I mean,
the one thing I would like to raise, if it were me, I would be asking Dr. Haas why they're not adding an androgen receptor blocker as part of the triplet, because they could substitute that in as part of the triplet therapy instead
yeah,
of the abiraterone.
I did ask, and they all seem to have similar issues with liver function. What I was told.
Well, we know abiraterone is processed through the liver for sure.
Yeah.
Gents is, why would there be a concern in one of the ides, enzalutamide or darolutamide or apalutamide with the liver? Any thoughts?
Even if the other utamides are processed through the liver, it doesn't mean that they will inflame the liver just because abiraterone did. They might use different metabolic pathways. So I don't see that as a contraindication to using an androgen blocker myself.
Yeah. I mean, the thought was,
Len?
I'm sorry, the thought was that once I'm done the chemo, restart the abiraterone at half dose.
right. Well, I mean, Bob, one of the things that we've been discussing in our group before you joined was the results of two major trials for de novo prostatic cancer. And both of these trials used triplet therapy simultaneously and had really good results rather than serially.
Right. No, I know.
So that's why I think Len would brought up, why don't they just add enzalutamide? Because I think that the data from the PEACE-1 trial and the ARASENS trial using different combinations with Taxol and Lupron, both were quite positive as compared to Taxol and Lupron alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I would ask your doc, can't we add, is there any reason that enzalutamide wouldn't work?
Yeah, I will. I mean, I brought it up to the nurse practitioner, but
Right.
take it up a level.
So this is sort of a 101 navigation point. You want to try and avoid the nurse practitioner unless it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah,
And
it's kind of. Yeah,
you have to advocate for yourself.
Oh, I know.
You want to see the doctor, especially early on. There's an issue in our experience, and my experience goes back, and I've seen this going back as far as 2007 at Centers of Excellence, that the nurse practitioners, they're not always on top of the research. Some of them have egos that encourage them to make decisions which may not be the decision, whose decisions may not be in the best interest of the patient. And we don't like, unless it's an absolute routine appointment where you know nothing's going to change and everything's status quo, we encourage our people strongly to try and see the doctor if they possibly can. So I think you've got to send a note to Dr. Haas and cite Piece 1 as a trial for enzalutamide, or Arison's as a trial, as Arison's for darolutamide, and say, Doc, why aren't I doing this? We do know that the prednisone can impact your heart. We've got guys on this call right now, and we'll get them to speak up briefly, momentarily, who have had issues around the steroids. We tend to think, and this is just, we don't give medical advice, but we can report what we've seen. We've seen people respond a little better to dexamethasone than to prednisone, where there have been heart issues, at least for a time. And I'm assuming, by the way, that you didn't stop when they took you off the abiraterone, they told you to wean off of the steroid, correct?
No, I stopped cold turkey, but it was 5 milligrams prednisone, so it was pretty low dose.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay.
And who told you that? Was that the doc or the nurse practitioner?
I'm not sure because it was through the portal. I don't remember.
So you should point out to Dr. Haas, nobody told me to wean off of the steroid. And that's why I want to see you, doctor. If you don't make these points and advocate for yourself, they're not going to ignore it. But when you send it to Dr. Haas and you say, Dr. Haas, I know I was on the abiraterone for long, but nobody said anything, about even coming off the steroids slightly slowly. Then all of a sudden their antennae are up and they know they're dealing with somebody who's smart, and they've got to be more careful because most people aren't going to even point it out to them.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think 5 or 6 days would be long enough to be an issue.
I don't know.
Okay. But it's certainly a valid point.
So just making the point, Bob, all we want is for them to say, we got an educated customer here. And they may come back and say, it doesn't matter after 6 days, but at least they know you're thinking about this.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So those was some of my thoughts. I want to comment on your son. I want to give you kudos because so many of our guys don't get their boys tested when they have metastatic disease. We think it's huge. Don't know, may depend on the size of the prostate, your son's prostate. Could be an issue, may not be an issue, but the fact is he now has a baseline.
Right.
And probably if he has a concern, let him test again in 6 months to a year.
Yeah, that's what I'm figuring, do it every year. Just going back to the genomic testing, I don't know, is there a way to I guess there's no way to upload my report that people can take a look at?
You can, one of my guys, one of our mods will volunteer. Herb is volunteering. Send it to herb@ancan.org.
All right, so herb@ancam.org?
Correct.
Yeah. And
Okay.
Herb will take a quick look at it and get back to you. And by the way, I don't think we have your email. Are you on our database yet, Bob, or not?
I mean, I'm registered with AnCam. I don't know if I'm on your specific database.
Yeah, if you got a reminder, then you're on did you get a reminder?
only I set up through Google, so I can put it through the chat.
Yeah, stick it in the chat and I'll take a look right now if you're on the database or not, but we just want to make sure we get you on there. I just want to say, I want to give you kudos, not just for your son, but for the way you're advocating for yourself and the way you've addressed this disease. And, UPenn is a great resource. I know of Dr. Haas. We know Dr. Narayan really well.
Okay.
Funnily enough, we have been talking to them, and we are in a joint research project with them with their oncocardiologists, which just got funded. So there's a lot of good things that you'll find. Our anecdotal experience is that the care at Penn is equal to, if not better than Jefferson. So again, you're doing all the right things.
Yeah. My initial thought was that Dr. Narayan, but he didn't have an appointment for a couple more weeks out. And I didn't really want to let things go 2 more weeks. So.
If at any time you need to backdoor Dr. Narayan, we can help you out with that. But it sounds like you're doing the right stuff with Dr. Haas, that she's on the board. We'd like to get her to rule out this triplet therapy, I think is what we're saying.
Right. No, I understand.
Right. The other question I had, Bob, is it ever a case that you saw the nurse practitioner and not the doc at one of your visits?
Well, the only time I saw the doc was the first visit. When I'm back for the chemo, it's labs. I see the nurse practitioner and then the chemo. That seems to be pretty standard, at least for Dr. Haas.
Okay.
I mean, other than the first visit, I've only actually spoken to Dr. Haas by phone once.
Well, I don't know. If it were me, I think I'd want to have more contact.
Yeah, let me see what I can do for.
Make sure they're on time. I mean, we don't know what the nurse practitioner tells Dr. Haas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To some extent, it's the weakest link theory here. The people that don't complain, they just leave it. But somebody who says, hey, I want to see the doctor, then they realize they can't get away with pushing you onto the nurse practitioner. Some nurse practitioners are really good, but by and large, my experience, I'll just talk for myself, has been that they're only good when you're strictly in a maintenance mode. And I just like to, Len, if you don't mind, if we can just throw it out. I know, Jeff Marchi, you want to say something about the heart issues, and Addy?
I could
You're
do
our
that.
man on that.
I could do that. I'm right now going, in fact, I just bought a new blood pressure monitor because my blood pressure has been high systolic, low systolic. I took dexamethasone for 3 days and went into AFib, which I hadn't had for 10 years. So I had to quit dexamethasone and go back to prednisone. I'm not sure if it's the prednisone or if it's the Zytiga itself that's causing it, but getting my heart regulated so it's below 130 and above 70 is difficult. Interesting thing, I just added gabapentin and it dropped my heart rate to like 90/60. Or not my heart rate, my blood pressure to like 90/60. 3 days in a row. It was not much higher than 95. Just, screwy results you get taking stuff with Zytiga and prednisone. I think that's enough.
Okay.
I'd like to
I mean,
welcome Bob to the group too. Take a minute. This is John. Like many of the guys here talking to, I'm also Gleason 9, and I was de novo metastatic at the beginning. Oh, by the way, if you don't mind, what do you do for a living?
I'm a retired dentist.
Oh, and do you have any kids still in the house?
Not just a 31-year-old son and actually a new grandbaby. Just
Oh, new grandbaby. Oh,
congratulations.
thanks.
Len has some of those too. Do you happen to know what the arrhythmia was?
Yeah, you know, and actually, when I started back on the abiraterone, the cardiologist, his name is Dr. Carver, who's at Penn. He's actually the chief of staff at Abramson Cancer Center, and he was great. Basically, I had some PBCs, APDs. That was pretty much it.
Okay,
Actually,
that's good.
Actually,
Can I make a quick comment? Can I make a quick comment before we cut out?
yeah.
Bob, this is Peter.
Go ahead, Peter.
Bob,
Yeah.
I just looked up my Caris report. I've had numerous genetic tests,
Okay.
and I was just looking back at my Caris report from my genomic test. And before I did my Caris test, I did an Ambry test for germline that came back positive for MSH6 Lynch syndrome, but Caris didn't mention that. Caris said what you just said, that I have mismatch repair status deficient and MSI high. It didn't mention the specific gene of my mutation. So I'm wondering if it might be wise to do another germline test from someone other than what you did, you know, like Ambry or a regular lab or color or something like that, that would test specific genes or germline mutations.
Well, I did the color test through
Promise.
through Promise, and they looked at, like I said, the top 20, and they all came back negative.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm just surprised because my Caris report reads the same like you just described, but I knew beforehand that I was already deficient. I already had a bad MSH6 gene. So if you've got a mismatch repair gene, it should spell it out someplace on some germline report. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
So what my recommendation to you would be not so much to do a different germline report, but I would get your either your blood, either the liquid biopsy, since you know your MSI high, and you know your tumor burden. You could get a liquid biopsy. It's not going to tell you about MSI. It'll tell you about tumor burden from, say, Foundation Medicine, and do a comparison. And then if something shows up that needs verifying on germline, then just do another germline.
Okay. Would it make sense?
Am I making sense to you, Bob? Are you following?
Yes.
Are you following what we're saying?
Right. So what you're saying is I should have some kind of genetic something to have a mismatch repair problem.
Not necessarily, but in all probability, you may well. Yeah.
Right. And so there's still more samples from my biopsy. Would that be better than a liquid biopsy?
Well, there's pros and cons. The liquid biopsy is not going to tell you your MSI status, but it is going to tell you your tumor burden.
Right.
The solid biopsy is not going to tell you your tumor burden, but it is going to tell you your MSI status. So, you know, it's either way.
Okay. All right. I mean, I have an appointment with the genetic counselor next week. I don't know if that's the person to bring it up with, but maybe that's where I'll start, and then talk to the a doctor about doing additional testing.
And
Yeah, I mean,
ask
Here's a,
about
here's a,
All right, Bob,
go
guys,
ahead, Len.
we really need to move on. Is that all right with everybody if we move on, Bob? Any urgent questions remaining? Because it's already
No.
10 to 7 or 15 to
Yeah.
7 here, or my
Yeah.
time.
No. Sure. Yeah. I'm good. I appreciate all
Okay.
the input.
Okay, very good. Thanks for joining the group, and we hope to see you again next week.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so can we go to Cal Van Z?
Yeah, I finished up 6 rounds of docetaxel end of April, and got another Lupron shot, I think, just about 3 weeks later. So I'm still on Lupron, and my PSA dropped from, I think it started at 31 in January, just before I started the docetaxel, but then it went up to 33 before the second round, which you all counseled me, it is not something to freak out about. But I was disappointed because it only dropped down to 14, and then 2 months, then I was gone for a couple months, and the doc said, don't worry about it. He is going to work on the Pluvicto, trying to get me set up for that. But when I got back, my PSA had gone back up to 24, and the Pluvicto still isn't available through our clinic. And so I'm going to start on cabazitaxel on August 1st, and just kind of monitor that and see how I'm doing. I've got a little neuropathy in my feet. It doesn't prevent me or make me fall from walking, but he's worried about that, and that possibly the cabazitaxel could apparently make that worse. So, and I got a scan. I got a new CT and bone scan a couple weeks ago. I haven't read them because I'm afraid. But I saw a urologist as a follow up, and they were worried about a spot on my kidney, and that apparently is okay.
Well, even though you haven't looked at the report, did your doctor talk about it at all? And maybe it's a good sign that he didn't, because he didn't find anything.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk. I'll talk to him about it when I see him on the 1st of August, and I'll read it just before I go in to see him.
so,
Good.
Cal,
Yeah.
The fact that your clinic doesn't have Pluvicto should not stop them giving it to you. And if it were me, I'd be getting this Pluvicto now before going to, that there isn't enough evidence right now that cabazitaxel is going to do anything more for you. And, to re-challenge right after having done docetaxel, I don't know what the basis for that is when we've got other treatments. And so I'd be talking to them about re-challenging after you've done Pluvicto with cabazitaxel.
Yeah, he mentioned that, and he was actually part of the trial, the Pluvicto trial, and it had 4, 6, I don't know, 8 patients, something like that in it, and he said that he didn't know enough about it in terms of sequencing, whether the Pluvicto might. I think he mentioned that it could deplete your bone marrow to the point that it might preclude the cabazitaxel later. So that was part of the reasoning, in addition to it not being readily available because of the previous production problems.
Well, I want to challenge that. Are you still? Is this still Dr. Zhao that you're seeing?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so I would challenge that. Len, wasn't there a consensus? Jim, can you please mute? I think it's probably Jim Nelson because we're getting some feedback. If you're not talking, please mute because it is distracting. Len, on the consensus webinar last week, wasn't there a consensus opinion that you use Pluvicto before you follow up with more chemo, or am I imagining that?
I believe you're right. I believe that's true. Go with Pluvicto before you go with cabazitaxel.
Right. And
I mean, after failing docetaxel.
right.
What
So
was
let us explain what we just said, Cal.
Okay.
If you look at the reminder for this week, Len talks about a webinar last week that was a joint production by Peter Mack in Australia and Prostate Cancer Foundation. And what they are trying to do is bring everybody up to date on the state of the art of using radionuclides, and in particular lutetium, but they did speak lutetium-177, but they did speak about others. And they had a couple of the Australian docs who are well known to us, Tekla Murphy and Mike Hoffman. And okay. And they also had a doctor from Germany and a doctor from Switzerland, Dr. Gillison, who's known to us, Silke Gillison. And she chairs what's called a consensus conference, which meets once a year, where all of the GU medoncs get together and they try to agree on protocols. And so they did get together this last year and they did agree on a bunch of protocols around radionuclide. And so they recited some of the agreements and they put them up on the screen. Now you can go back to the reminder and you can click on the YouTube video and you can watch the webinar, or maybe somebody, one of our Ben Nathanson or one of our guys or Peter, they'll put the link to the YouTube in the chat window. And I think one of the consensus was that you go to Pluvicto before you re-challenge with cabazitaxel. I'm not sure, but I think so. And that's what Zhao needs to see.
Okay.
Because we need to find you. I mean, if it ain't at Swedish, I'm sure Seattle Cancer Center has got it. And I'm sure that there are enough private people in private clinics in the Seattle area where you're going to be able to find Pluvicto. And you need that Pluvicto because we think you should get that Pluvicto into you earlier rather than later. Another issue to talk about early is Provenge. You can do them at the same time. Herb will talk about this momentarily, but Herb did his Provenge right before he started his Pluvicto. But it should have been raised with you. The time to do it is now. And
I thought that your PSA had to be down around 5 or something before you were a candidate for Provenge.
It isn't that the PSA has to be down. It's that the disease has to be not too far advanced. And you've always made a lot of PSA. You could be a high PSA producer. We don't know.
Yeah.
But what we do know is if you're going to get it now. Don't get it later. Sorry, Len, go ahead.
I just want her, it's me. I wanted to ask a quick question. Cal,
Yeah.
you're only on Lupron right now?
Yes.
I mean, is there a reason that they withheld either enzalutamide or abiraterone?
Yeah. So I went on to docetaxel when the abiraterone wasn't working last year.
And what about enzalutamide?
Uh, I've talked to him about that, but his feeling was that after the failure of abiraterone, that the Xtandi wasn't shown to be very effective.
It's true, but not being very effective doesn't mean it doesn't work in 100% of people.
No.
Not being very effective means that there's a smaller percentage of successes than they would like. However, it seems to me that given that, I mean, we just put this in our blog about the importance of androgen receptor signaling in most advanced prostate cancers. I would think that a trial of enzalutamide wouldn't hurt.
Okay, I'll talk to him about that.
The other question I had for you is, I forget, do you know which mutations your tumor bears?
Yeah, I've got that. I've got TP53, and I could go get the report, but I don't
Okay, so
remember.
the other paper that came out very recently, and I heard a discussion with Mark Markowski and Emmanuel Manarakis about this, is bipolar androgen therapy.
Yeah.
And BAT, according to Antonarakis as well as Murkowski, seems to work better in people with P53 mutations than they don't. So it's because, I was quite impressed by the discussion and would consider it at some point. It might be worth asking your physician about it, what they think of BAT, because I'm a little afraid of cabazitaxel after Taxol. If you already have peripheral neuropathy, they're both Taxol based, they both are microtubule based, it's a little chancy for me. Plus, they're the same mechanism. So to sequence them one after the other with nothing in the middle is also strange to me.
Yeah, I think he might view it as, he was actually talking about 8 rounds of docetaxel rather than 6. But because we had these plans and also because of some of the side effects, I mean, the first 4 rounds, I recovered really well. The 5th round, not so great. The 6th round, to tell you the truth, I still feel like I'm recovering now. So I lost a lot of strength. And the other thing I did was that I went off of prednisone. I just wanted to give myself a holiday. And I remember you all talking about weaning yourself off of that. So I did that. I took a couple weeks to kind of half the dose. And I just felt sore and tired all the time. And it was a little sobering because it made me realize that probably the reason I felt so great last year was because of the dexamethasone that I was on, rather than just feeling like I didn't have any symptoms.
I'd like to encourage you to do one thing, Cal. I would get a second opinion.
Okay.
I think it might be a good time to go over to Seattle Cancer Hutch, see Dr. Schweitzer or Dr. Yu or Heather Chang. They're all great. We know them all. You got 3 choices that we can name off the top, and see what they would do.
Okay.
And Rick, I just have to I just need to correct something I said earlier. The conference did not say anything about using cabazitaxel after docetaxel if Pluvicto wasn't available. Not surprising that they didn't, mention that, but so we really have no information on that.
Oh, it didn't say, it didn't recommend. Is that what you're saying?
It didn't address it.
Didn't address it.
Well, here's what it said: in chemotherapy fit patients, use it after androgen receptor pathway and docetaxel. In chemotherapy, unfit patients use after androgen therapy. And that's, and then also use it before radium-223, but they didn't mention cabazitaxel use at all.
Yeah, right. But what they did say is use it after docetaxel, correct? In fit patients.
Well, not in the notes I captured, but of course I didn't capture everything. It's possible they said something about that, but I didn't capture it.
Len, just repeat. We're having a little difficulty hearing you because of your connection. Did you say that?
Oh, sorry.
That they said that after Lupron and docetaxel, Pluvicto should be used. Is that what you just said? In fit patients.
Yes.
Okay, so it seems to me that says if you've done Lupron.
Yes, did you hear me?
And yes, we can. If you've done Lupron and you've done docetaxel, then the next step would be Pluvicto.
Okay. I'll talk to him about that.
Cal, this is Peter.
Yeah.
Just want to make one comment. Last week on our call, we spent a fair bit of time talking about the fears and anxiety that go along with our diagnosis, and sometimes it's and John Antonucci probably back this up. Sometimes it's wise getting some professional help just to get that under control in our situation. I mean, when you talk about not wanting to look at your reports and so forth, there's no shame in getting some professional help, a counselor or somebody like that on a regular basis, just to help manage this thing, because it's a wild ride and we're all in it.
Thank you for the reminder. I've actually got 2 counselors and I just haven't seen them in a while.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. All right. That's it for me. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, we're going. Thank you, Cal. We're going to go to Carl Foreman next.
So I guess I was, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, we hear you.
I was privately chatting last week with Rick and I think you, Len, as well, about what I was going to ask last Monday, which I didn't have the opportunity to do. My current situation is that I had a total of 7 rounds of cabazitaxel and carboplatin. After the 7 rounds, my other than after the very first round when the PSA dropped almost 90%, every round since, the PSA has been on average doubling, and it is now at 41.2, having been a low of 4 when I first started. So the discussions I've been having with my oncologist, actually I was scheduled for my 8th round last Thursday, so that has been put off. Also, the prednisone that I had been taking on a daily basis, my oncologist told me to stop that for the time being. He ordered a CAT scan as well as a whole body bone scan. I had the CAT scan on Friday, had the whole body bone scan on Monday. The whole body bone scan, the report came back at the end of the same day, which I was pleasantly surprised. And the indication was that, just to read, pretty much saying that it really hasn't changed much from the last whole body bone scan, which was done in May. So that appears to be a positive sign, or at least I look at that as such. The CAT scan results have not yet come back. My oncologist went away on vacation, but I've been emailing and he has been responding. When he comes back from vacation, I do have a follow-up appointment with him on August 2nd. He led me to believe, or he actually discussed with me, that if both the CAT scan and the MRI were to show no progression of the disease, that I could very likely go back on to continuing with the chemo combination. In the alternative, he did talk about Pluvicto, as has been talked a great deal in this forum as well. I did go to the website pluvicto.com, and they had a link to show the locations of where Pluvicto is available. Well, when I clicked on it, it simply said coming soon. So their own website doesn't show the locations. And they told me the name of a person who I think Rick, you know, and I do know, called Becky Haynes. And they gave me.
We can find you. You got to give us the short version here, Carl. So
Okay.
if you need a place to get Pluvicto, we'll help you get a place. There are plenty of places available for Pluvicto. And yes, you can call Becky Haynes. She'll tell you where. We can tell you where. Pluvicto is available.
Okay, yeah, I assumed it was. So yes, I would appreciate that assistance. And so that's really the short version is yes, that's where I'm at now.
Have you asked Soraya if New Jersey Cancer Institute is offering Pluvicto?
Well, you know, originally he did say they were about to, but then the latest conversations that we don't have it yet. We don't have the supply.
When was that?
That was last week.
Okay, so why don't you ask him to tell you where you can find it? And if he's not willing to do that, come back to us. You know, worst comes to worst, you've got to go into the city and you can get it in the city. The chances are that won't be, but it's once every 6 weeks, so it's not a huge deal.
Right, understood. Okay.
But the question really is, where is your mind?
Okay,
I mean,
thank you.
you know, we've got three options right now. We've got more chemo. We've got rechallenging with the PARP inhibitor, which we've discussed here. I don't know if you've discussed that with Soraya. And we got Pluvicto. What does Soraya say about those three options? What do your other folks say about those three options? And what do you think?
Yeah, I would love to be able to re-challenge with olaparib. I actually contacted AstraZeneca and asked them if there's any information relating to re-challenging. They said, no, we have none. I guess it's no surprise, but there doesn't appear to be much of any information I've been trying to find. I will address that again on Tuesday when I meet with Dr. Soraya on my next appointment to do the re-challenging with olaparib, because that was the one that was gave me the best outcome for a period of time, for almost 2 years. So the other thing he did say is possibility of going on to another trial. I've done several. I reached out to Mark Stein at Columbia Presbyterian. He has an ongoing CAR-T trial that he is doing. But so I am trying to get my options together. Actually, I've been trying to reach Dr. Beltran in Boston at Dana-Farber for a telemed consultation. I haven't heard back whether she actually even does that.
Who is it you want to see in Dana-Farber?
Beltran.
Oh, Dr. Beltran. Well, Ben Nathanson has seen her, but again, you know, it may be a good idea. I think I might send a note to Doctors Munster and Domchek and ask them if they have any information on re-challenging with PARP inhibitors, even though they're not GU medical oncologists. I mean, I know that Dr. Munster is very tied in now with with the GU medical oncologist because of the work that she's doing. And I think that, do we know, when was the last time you did a PSMA scan?
It has been over a year, and that is also Dr. Soraya had said that if we decide to change therapies, then we will have a PSMA scan before that therapy is started.
And a year ago, was that PSMA scan, did it show you to be PSMA avid?
Yes.
So I think if it was me, I would try Pluvicto.
Right.
And see how it does, because we've seen great results with Pluvicto, and not for everybody, but for some people. And, you know, it's an easy therapy to tolerate. And did they not do any PSMA scans when you were on that, before they gave you the actinium?
No.
They relied on the PSMA that was from the previous year, yeah?
Right.
Okay, so I mean, I think I certainly wouldn't be looking at another clinical trial right now, because there are other options, and I think you have to lean on Soraya to identify where you can get the Pluvicto, and if he can't come up with it, then we can certainly do that for you. But you know, my concern is that that it's going to introduce another medical person to your team. And, you know, we should be able to do it, or Soraya should be able to organize, that for you.
Yes, I do expect that to happen. I did also reach out to Tagawa at Weill Cornell relating to the trial I was on, including the actinium. And I had, my question to him was, even though I've already had the actinium, and it was only one treatment for that triple therapy, would that preclude me from having actinium again, especially in combination with lutetium-177, which Steve Saft was just starting to do with Tagawa. So he basically said,
why would you want it? Why would you even go there? Why are you concerned about the actinium when you haven't been through the lutetium Pluvicto yet?
well, because and that was one of the questions I asked Dr. Hoffman in that program. I found it kind of curious that there really wasn't much known information about combining the two. So I was surprised.
But there's plenty of information about the lutetium, right?
Yes.
So why do you want to be the guinea pig to figure out if combining the two is the right thing to do when we don't know?
Right.
I mean, again, Carl, I don't mean to be harsh, but we got to go for the low-hanging fruit. We know lutetium works. If it doesn't work with you, then we say, okay, it didn't work that well. Maybe we need the actinium. But why are we chasing the actinium when we know the lutetium works? We don't know whether that treatment that Steve got is going to work or not work. And if Pluvicto would have been available for Steve, we would have encouraged him to do the Pluvicto. Why? Because the trials say it works. And you know, if you want to be the Stanley and go ahead and be the explorer for everybody else, God bless you. But for me, I want to do what I know works. This is why we twisted your arm to get you into the chemo, because we knew it would work. Did it work for long? Was it durable? No, not what we hoped, but it did work for a while. So for us, let's go for the Pluvicto that we've seen has results, and see how long we can get out of that. Maybe by the time you come off that, we'll know that we can re-challenge with Pluvicto.
Right. Just so that you understand, I am looking at my plan B, C, D, and E. So all these other types of therapies are on my radar. Yes, Pluvicto is at the top of the list, but there are others that, you know, what would happen if, And I always want to make sure I have
Okay,
a plan
but
B. So you can,
here's what I want you to do. I want you to concentrate on the Pluvicto. And let's find a place. It's not that hard right now to find places that are doing Pluvicto. I realize you went to the website, you didn't find it there. I don't know why it isn't published, but there's a bunch of guys on this trial who independently have managed to find where Pluvicto is available. That's where we want you to put your energy.
okay.
I mean, Carl, think of it this way. Rick said something which I'm not sure is true, which is if your bone scan showed no progression from the time you started chemo, that's a pretty indicative sign that it's doing something. Now, where the PSA is coming from, we don't know.
Right.
But the scans are usually considered to be more reliable information. So I'm not so sure we should just write off the fact that the chemo didn't work.
And Soraya has said the same thing.
And if it were me, and you know my hero, my sequence, I haven't been on a clinical trial, Carl. I've been on everything that was shown to work, including now Pluvicto. And it seems to me that that's the strategy, that until you need to go to something where you want to be the guinea pig, why not take the things that work?
Okay.
And I don't
Thank
need
you.
to say any more.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Carl, for the update. We're going to move now to Bob McHugh, and I know he's got an update for us on his radiation treatments for lymph node recurrences.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Len. I think this will be pretty quick. I did indeed had a lymph node recurrence, 3 small spots, bilaterally, 2 on one side, 1 on the other, showed up on a PYLARIFY scan in May. I talked to my regular oncologist, Dr. O, at Mount Sinai, and also spoke with Dr. Geinesman at Fox Chase. And Geinesman suggested a minimalist approach to target the 3 spots directly with no ADT. So that's what I'm doing. I've had 3 out of 5 radiation treatments with via tomotherapy. And as I said, no ADT. And I'm just going to finish up on Friday and keep testing my PSA and hoping it works for a couple of years. That's it.
Okay, so you've got, what is it, 4 down now and
It was
2 to go? I forgot how many you were getting.
I was going to get 5, and I've had 3. 1 tomorrow and 1 on Friday, and then I'm done.
Okay. Well, we wish you good luck with that. Let us know how it works. And I assume you're not having any problems with side effects or anything.
Nothing so far, thank goodness.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that update. Let's go to Jim.
Thank you.
Hold on, Len. Let's just check in. Yeah, let's just check in with some other folks. And I mean, I think it's a great approach, especially for you, Bob, if you can avoid the hormone therapy, which you don't want to do. So, you know, full marks to both Gainesman and Dr. O. Who is it that's really your lead at this point, Dr. O or Gainesman?
I think that I went to Dr. O for a second opinion. I'm sorry, Dr. O has been my med-onc friend since I was diagnosed 7, 8 years ago. And I went to Geinesman to get a second opinion. Actually, Dr. O's first call on the thing was much more radiation and a year of ADT. I've never done more than 6 months. But that was after just, reading my report quickly. But Geinesman was the one who said, I don't see why you need to do all that. Rick, I've got to pat you on the back. You, and I think it might have been Peter, said to me when I first reported this to the group, you said, why not just do SBRT? something simple, just target. You have 3 tiny little lesions. Why don't just go after them and see what happens? And that's what Dr. Geinesman agreed on.
Okay. And is Dr. O on board with that?
I gave Dr. O a summary, and he wrote back, "Thanks for the update." So little hard to interpret. But I am going to have telemedicine with him next week. So, I mean, it's going to be too late. He may say, well, I think you should do ADT, and I guess I'll cross that bridge when I come to it.
Yeah. I would just say, which you're doing, keep a very close watch. And I just want to ask anybody else what they think about what Bob's doing. Because anybody want to comment on that? Does it apply to anyone else who's on this call right now?
Well, this is John. It doesn't apply to me, but this is what I hope will apply to me someday. This is what we kind of hope for, you know? Get a couple of lesions, shoot them down. Don't waste our entire minds and bodies trying to get a couple of spots and have a good outcome. Good luck with this. I hope it works out nicely.
Well, that's what the doctors, it's exactly what the doctors said, John. They said, why, let's keep ADT on the shelf. You may need it again, but let's not, use our entire arsenal when highly targeted radiation might do the trick.
I'm curious, what Gleason score did you have?
My Gleason was originally an 8, and then after they took my gland out and they did the biopsy, they downgraded it to 7, 4 plus 3.
7, okay. Thanks. Just curious how that may, impact.
And by the way, one of the reasons that Dr. Geinesman said this minimalist approach made sense, he even said, you could wait 6 months, but my PSA was only 0.5.
Right.
Are you castrate sensitive?
No, I've had 3 rounds of ADT, 6 months each time, Gosselin, and I haven't even really had terrible symptoms, but side effects, I should say, but no, I don't think so.
Well, yes, you are castrate sensitive.
No,
I see what you mean. Yeah, I'm sorry.
He's sensitive. He's
I got caught up in the jargon. When I get the ADT, my PSA goes to undetectable and my testosterone drops like a rock.
Cool. Enjoy the time off, man. Enjoy. And you got a great attitude.
That's what it's all about. Just buying a couple of years here and there. So thank you all, gentlemen.
All right, thank you, Bob. By the way, Peter Kafka, did you need time tonight?
No, I'm good.
No, okay.
Next week, I'll talk to you next week or week after.
Yeah,
Okay.
Peter, safe travels, man.
Yep, will do. Thank you.
Yep, safe travels. So now we can go to Jim Nelson.
Okay, can I start out by thanking Rick Davis? Rick, somehow I got disconnected, unsubscribed, and he went over and above. He caught it and showed me how to do it to get it corrected. So thank you, Rick. Let me tell you, my story is a little bit different than anybody you've heard. For 15 years, I've had lung cancer, stage 4, in the brain, in the bones, in the liver, and the kidneys, everywhere. And they have it under control with a pill. Anyway, they couldn't figure out why my bone cancer wouldn't be under control. And that's when they found out about 5 years ago that I had prostate cancer. And my PSA is over 1,000. And I just come off of, why I'm here to ask you a question about that. I came off of that docetaxel. I had 3 sessions of that, 3 for 3 weeks, and it damn near killed me. It's the worst thing I ever experienced in my life. A couple of times I really thought I was going to die, but I didn't. Before I took that thing, I was playing golf 3 times a week. I can't walk from here to the mailbox. I can't get up and walk into the other room without getting all out of breath. I'm really in bad shape. I don't know what he's going to do about that, but we'll see. What he wants to do now is on August 10th, taking a PET scan. And from there, we've talked about what our options are. He's looking at taking a what do you call it, infusion of Jevtana. I'm scared to death of it. It's a chemo thing, and after going through what I just went through with that Dr. Tupfer, I mean, I'm scared of it. He says right behind that we've got the one that I'm real pleased with, the Pluvicto. That sounds like that would be a good one for me. I guess my question is this: do you think I have to take that Jevtana before I take the Pluvicto? I guess that's my question.
Yes, in the United States, they say unless you're chemotherapy unfit, you have to have the docetaxel before Pluvicto.
Okay, that answers that.
Yeah, go ahead.
My doctor seemed to say that. He said we've got to take this.
Hold on, Jim, hold on. Len, he's done docetaxel. The question is, does he have to do Jevtana?
Oh.
This is the same question that
Same
came up
question,
before.
yeah.
Say exactly the same question. The answer is what we said earlier on,
Oh,
Jim.
sorry, I missed that.
So he's done docetaxel. It's crippled him. And now the doc wants him to do Jevtana, and Jim's nervous about doing it because he didn't do well on the docetaxel. So I want to make 2 points to you, Jim, and we cannot give you medical advice, cannot tell you what to do. We can tell you a couple of things. One, the Jevtana for some men is much, much easier to tolerate than the docetaxel. That's why it was developed. And there are probably guys on this call who will tell you that. On the other hand, there are a few guys who have found Jevtana very difficult. So everybody's different. The second thing is that we seem to think, and the consensus is, that you can follow docetaxel with Pluvicto. Have you had a second-line anti-androgen? Have you had abiraterone or enzalutamide or apalutamide or one of those?
No.
I'm not certain, but I think you have to have done one of those before you can get the Pluvicto. Does anybody, can anybody correct me on that? Or can anybody help me on that?
Yes, that's true. Yes,
That's correct.
he has to have a second-line anti-androgen.
So you need to be chasing up your man. Never mind him thinking about Jevtana. He should be getting you on a second-line anti-androgen because the insurance is not going to approve your Pluvicto until you've been on a second-line anti-androgen. And this brings us back to what we said to you the first time, Jim. I don't think this guy Goudin at University of South Carolina has the expertise. We kind of said that last time. And we encouraged you to make an appointment with Dr. Efstathiou in Houston. Or you could go to Dr. George in North Carolina. But you need somebody who's got better qualification because we want to get.
We evaluated this doctor before we went to him, and he was very highly rated.
Who was highly rated?
The doctor in South Carolina.
Well, who highly rated him?
I forget where we went. That was 10 years ago.
Okay. Whoever highly rated him, I don't know that he's a genitourinary medical oncologist. And why is he rechallenging with Jevtana when he hasn't given you a second-line anti-androgen? Most of the guys on this call would raise their eyebrows with that. I'm not saying he's wrong, but what I am saying is most docs would give you, now we know that triplet therapy, which is something like Lupron plus chemotherapy plus a second line
I take
anti-androgen.
Lupron. I take Lupron.
Okay, but that's the way to go. And you haven't even done, never mind doing them all at the same time. You haven't even done a part and he wants to come back with another chemotherapy. I don't know where he's getting that from. I'd want to see some evidence.
I think that he's saying that he has to do that one before he can do the Pluvicto.
No, he has to do a second line anti-androgen before he can do the Pluvicto. He doesn't have to do the Jeff Tanner. He's done docetaxel.
What are you calling those things? What are you calling those things?
Androgen receptor
I'll let
blockers.
someone else take over.
Androgen receptor blockers. We can give you names. You have enzalutamide.
Category is antigens.
Or maybe we should
Is that it?
put them in the chat box for you. Yeah, second line anti-androgens is another way to put it.
Okay. Okay, that was my question. And thank you very much for taking the time to answer.
Yeah, it's fine, but I would strongly encourage you to get a second opinion on your treatment.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anybody want to comment? Anyone
Yeah.
else have anything they'd like to say to Jim? I don't like the sound of my own voice here.
Well, Rick, we've got an awful lot of guys to get through, and there's only half an hour left here.
Yeah, it has to be
Well,
PSA.
we've got 45 minutes, 50 minutes, and I'll stay on as long as it takes, Len.
All right. So who else wants to comment here?
Yeah, I did land this to Dennis. He also has to be PSMA avid to get Pluvicto.
That's right. That's right. And has Dr. Goudin done a PSMA scan on you yet?
That question is for you, Jim.
I'm sorry, I didn't. I was writing.
Did you have a PSMA PET scan?
Oh yes, I've had a number of them. Well, I've had lung cancer for 15 years.
No, a PSMA PET scan, Jim. PSMA PET scan. That's the PET scan.
That's a different PET scan?
Yes.
Oh, I haven't. I just had a regular.
For prostate cancer.
No.
Okay.
PSMA?
Yes. So Dr. Goudin has to give you a PSMA scan before we can talk Pluvicto.
Okay, I understand. PSMA. Thank you.
Right. I mean, if they don't know that, you're in real trouble with that doctor. I can tell you that right now. All right. Any other questions for Jim or comments? So Herb tells me that last week we didn't get to Dane and Kevin. So Dane, are you still with us now?
I think he left.
He left? Okay. How about Kevin? Are you still on the phone, Kevin? Yes.
They are.
You're muted, Kevin. Calling Kevin. Kevin on the telephone. Are you with us? All right, well, maybe we'll check back in with Kevin later. Well, let's go to Jim and Barbara Squillicote. Jim and Barbara. No? Can anybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Len. I'm here.
I can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay. All right, good. So I guess Jim and Barbara are gone. Jim Barnes, are you with us?
I am.
Okay, you're up.
Hi, everybody. Hey, Bob, welcome to the group. This is a great group to get educated on. So I just want to provide an update tonight. I just started docetaxel. So I went preemptive. I got the summer buzz cut first, which is good because I had it about 2.5 weeks ago. My hair's falling out like crazy. So it's not a bad look, right?
You're looking good, Jim.
So anyway, I had my first treatment of docetaxel. I had some discussions with you guys a month or so ago regarding Provenge, and having discussion regarding my doctor with that before the docetaxel. And he felt, and he was very familiar with he was very familiar with Provenge, had prescribed it numerous times. He was involved in a clinical study, had a patient in a clinical trial for Provenge, but he feels that my setup, because how the PSMA, how my Mets in my hips lit up from the PMSA scan, he felt that it's a really good setup for Pluvicto. So he wanted to get me some docetaxel treatments first, which is a requirement, for standard of care before you get the Pluvicto. So here I am on my first one. My next one's I'm going to get another docetaxel treatment this Friday, which I'm not looking forward to. The chemotherapy really isn't. It's kind of rough, just the chemo fog in your brain, and then just the side effects of how it affects your mouth and your esophagus and your sinuses, everything else. It's not a lot of fun. So I don't. My preference would be not to go through much docetaxel at all, but it's a matter of how much docetaxel do you have to have before you're eligible for Pluvicto. And my doctor said to me, it just says you have to have chemotherapy treatment. There's no set amount. So I could actually tell him that these symptoms are intolerable, which I'm not thrilled continuing on with them, but that I want to get to Pluvicto sooner or later. And I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on Pluvicto. Is there a benefit of me enduring the chemo, the docetaxel? Am I gonna see it shrink tumors or lower PSA, and is that gonna set me up better for Pluvicto, or should I be on Pluvicto a lot sooner than later? And should I still push my doctor for Provenge? I know a couple of you guys are very pro Provenge here, but I just wanted to throw that out and just to the group. Kind of rhymes with everybody else's issues that they've brought up here.
So
Boy,
Jim,
what a good strategy question. I can't wait to hear what they say about that, Jim.
So Jim, what's your PSA?
My PS, when I started, the Eligard and the enzalutamide, my PSA went to undetectable, and then I couldn't tolerate the enzalutamide, so he switched me to abiraterone, and my PSA started rising, minuscule for a while, and then now it's up to 3.8. So last one was like 2.8. So it's making bigger advances.
I just pulled up.
So Jim, my own sense is, having been through Provenge before Pluvicto, I wonder if I've reasoned it out that that Provenge kind of juices up your immune system. It sensitizes your T cells to a prostate cancer antigen. And I think that the radiation then might build on that. I don't have any proof but I have a feeling that the radiation killing the cells through Pluvicto then might actually trigger more activity on the T cells. Again, there's no data. I'm just speculating. So is there any reason, given that your PSA is 3-ish, not to do Provenge now?
After one dose of Taxol, or should I, endure through
Well, what's the docetaxel doing to your PSA?
Oh, unknown yet. I haven't had my PSA tested. I'm less than three. I mean, this Friday will be 3 weeks for my second treatment, so they're going to test my PSA there. So I don't know what it is currently.
But if your PSA is low, it can't bring it down very much because it's only 3 now, right? And that's the right range for Provenge. So it may, one option, and my disclaimer, we are not physicians. I'm not a physician, but having been through this sequence of chemo, of Abby, of Provenge, of Pluvicto, it might make sense to do it before.
To do the Provenge before the
Pluvicto.
Okay.
The Pluvicto will work if your PSA is 20. The Provenge won't.
Can I go back to the question about the first issue, which is the discontinuing docetaxel? I only want to say that I'm somebody who didn't succeed in doing 6 sessions. I only did 3-week apart sessions. And I'm curious.
You're breaking up a little bit, Larry.
Yeah, get closer to the mic.
Let me see. Is that better?
Yes.
Much better.
Okay. I'm somebody who did not complete my 6 session regime. I had to stop after 3 sessions of docetaxel over 9 weeks. My question is, so far you've described like the normal horrible side effects. Have you had, I didn't stop until I had more serious side effects. Are you getting peripheral neuropathy or rashes or a fever, like a high fever reaching 100, 101?
No, so far.
So, I mean, I don't know. The Prevenge issue aside, which I don't see any reason why you can't do Prevenge in the middle of everything else. It's not like, I don't think it's related, if that's correct, Herb. So, I know docetaxel can be very unpleasant, and you want to get out of it. I don't know that. I'm not sure if you should try another see how it goes for the next couple of doses. They may be equally. You talk to your doctor about getting betamethasone or something to help you with the side effects for a few days after each session.
I mean, Larry, I agree with you. I mean, I'm also the person that failed after 3. I was ready to get my 4th, and my physicians came in and said, "We can't give this to you. You're too beat up."
Yeah.
You're too what?
I was too beat up.
Oh.
I had too many really outrageous side effects, and they just said, "We're not going to give you the 4th. We don't want to kill you."
And my question was also that what is the requirement when he says your doctor didn't seem to be specific about what's the requirement for having done or failed or refused docetaxel before Pluvicto? It seems like 1 session is a little minimal if you haven't had any real side effects, or you can just refuse, and does that take care of it and get you to lutetium? I don't know.
I think it's all amorphous, Larry. I think they just said you have to have had some chemo before Pluvicto. They didn't, the package insert doesn't say anything that you had to have 6 cycles or you had to fail with side effects or anything else.
So I have a question on that.
From the
I have a
conference
question
we
on
just
that,
saw.
James. My question is, in the VISION trial, do we know what the average amount of docetaxel sessions was for the people that went through? Is it reported in the VISION trial?
I'd have to look. I don't remember.
My concern is this. I'll come back to you, Len. My concern is this. We know in that VISION trial that they required docetaxel before the Pluvicto. As I remember correctly, they didn't ask people in the comparison group to go through the docetaxel, but they did require people in the Pluvicto group to have done docetaxel. It was a weird protocol. That said, I mean, we know with somebody like Al Latimer, he hasn't responded that well, and he got his Pluvicto before he did docetaxel. So the question in my mind is docetaxel playing a role in the efficacy of Pluvicto or not? And I don't think there's an answer to that. It would have been a great question to have asked those guys last week in Australia. But I think we could probably write to Hoffman and ask them what they think. How much docetaxel? I would be looking at what the experience was of the people on the Vision trial who did. So I'm just throwing that out, that maybe it plays a role, the docetaxel.
Gee, that's such a good question, and it will have to be answered someday if there's ever going to be an indication, if the requirement for docetaxel is ever going to be lifted. Somebody's going to have to rigorously answer that question.
Well, John, there are trials now for Pluvicto in the castration-sensitive state. So I think it's going to move back once those trials report results. Right, and the other trial that was done was showing head-to-head comparison between Pluvicto and cabazitaxel, showing no difference in outcomes. So I think at some point they will move Pluvicto back, and it just depending on the result of these trials.
Yeah, they were all on Lupron too, right?
Yeah, I think everybody. I'd be surprised if they weren't.
Yeah.
So Jim, the webinar we saw last week on Pluvicto, they did say that if you were chemotherapy unfit, that you didn't need to do the chemotherapy, you just needed the second line anti-androgen, which you already had. So the question is, would your doctor be willing to claim that you're unfit for additional chemotherapy or not? And of course, it depends on how you feel about it first.
Honestly, his opinion seemed really flexible there, that he said we could do one chemotherapy treatment and then get you over to Pluvicto. He said that's all the standard of care requirements mandate. And so he seemed pretty flexible on that. So when I talked to him this Friday, I'll have to revisit that.
Is there any other recommendations we can give Jim of how to deal with how he can deal with the chemo?
What side effects are you trying to deal with in particular?
I think it was just a general malaise, chemo fog, and the physical aspects with my mouth and my throat, my teeth and my sinuses, everything else was really horrible for the first week. Made it really difficult to eat. Really didn't have nausea. Had lots of nausea medicine. So I mean, it's basically the fog and the fatigue and everything else.
Were you doing ice chips during sucking on ice chips during the chemo?
I did not. I'll keep that in my hip pocket though.
Yeah, that's what I was recommended to me, and what I did through my 6 docetaxel carboplatin. I assume it helped. I didn't have any problems.
One thing, for whatever it might be worth, I was really badly neutropenic after the first time, and so when I went for the second, I asked about reducing the dose, and they said they could reduce it 20% and they would still be equally effective. that may help with some of the side effects. I just had mine yesterday, so I'll find out. But that could be useful if you do a second round.
Okay.
You know, I wanted to ask you about that, Bob. I'm just curious why they didn't give you a pump, because most places now are giving you a pump that will automatically pump in the Neulasta after a day. After
Yeah.
24 hours, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Insurance company.
Really?
Yeah. So the stuff I'm getting is about 60% the price of Neulasta.
Jeez.
It's supposed to be
Jeez.
biosimilar. It's made by Sandoz, so it's a major company. So hopefully it'll give me the same results.
Yeah. Guys, I wanted to put in the chat window, and I think I might have just found it. Alan Edel this past week published a list of trials that are currently ongoing for lutetium 177. And I want to put it in because it applies to the conversation we've just been having. I've just got to see if I can locate it. And I actually wrote back to him and I said, you know, what's the concern about trials, because you can get it now? And he said, well, some people are still looking for trials. So as soon as I find it, keep an eye on the chat window for the next few moments, and I'll try and locate it, and I'll put it in for you. Did anyone else see that? Did anyone else read that?
I certainly did. I looked through the list.
Right. I have it now. I'm going to put it right. I'm going to put it into the chat window right now. But if you're interested to see what's going on in terms of other space, like hormone sensitive space, please check on this. Oh, did you just put it in, Ben? Is that the same one?
Yeah, he did.
Okay, Ben beat me to it. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, that's courtesy of Alan Edel. It's a good list.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Jim, are you okay?
Yes.
You have more questions?
No, that was good. That was good direction.
Yeah, Jim, one more thing. Did you ice your, if you're worried about neuropathy, also I was icing my fingertips and icing my toes, which was recommended by the doctor.
Huh. No, I have not had a problem with neuropathy at this point.
Yeah, but yes, to avoid it. And I was icing my head. They had special gel packs for reducing hair loss, and it was a lot of work, but
Were you happy with the results?
Yeah, I had good results. My PSA went down to below 0.05 after 3 treatments, and I completed the 6.
Good.
So Russ, you're still going through your chemo regimen?
Me? No, I completed the chemo in December, and then I went through radiation this spring. Now I'm officially in remission.
So your chemo brought you down to 0.5.
The chemo, yeah, was 0.5, and then at this point it's below 0.1, or at the last time I was tested, I guess, a month ago.
Very good. Let me check in again with Kevin on the phone. Kevin, are you with us? No. All right, then we'll go to Mark Finn.
Okay, just kind of, and I thank you guys. I noticed a couple people put some stuff in the chat box. But what are the impacts of going prednisone cold turkey?
Nasty.
And what's
I just put it in there. I mean, I have a buddy who went cold turkey because nobody told him, and he lost well over 30 pounds. He didn't know what was making him sick. He had no idea. He was with one of the most eminent GU medical oncologists in the country.
and how long was he on prednisone, Rick? How long
he was on prednisone for quite a long time because he had a lot of chemo. He was on abiraterone and he had a lot of chemotherapy.
Okay.
But they never told him to wean off. And the doc overlooked it and the nurse practitioner overlooked it.
Okay.
And they didn't know what was wrong with him. And finally, they figured it out. The problem is, and this I have to defer to Dr. John or to Herb, the problem is that the adrenals don't wake up quickly enough. So you're taking the prednisone when you're on abiraterone because it puts the adrenals to sleep. So you substitute with prednisone. And when you stop taking prednisone cold turkey and the adrenals have been asleep for a while, they don't wake up. So there are all kinds of side effects that are related to adrenal insufficiency. I forget what they call that. There's a name for that disease,
Okay.
adrenal insufficiency.
Addison's.
Yeah, Addison's. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that.
And let me just ask the guy. Let me just ask the docs. Do you want to say anything about that?
Well, yeah, when it's a disease, it's Addison's disease, and the withdrawal does depend somewhat on how long you've been on it. But I guess it can happen after fairly short-term use. I mean, probably not, a 5-day course for poison ivy, but the kind of terms we're talking about. So you'd get severe fatigue or weakness or joint pain, body aches, and then Rick mentioned about the weight loss, constitutional symptoms. Your resistance to stress and infection would be diminished.
Yeah, no appetite.
Okay. Len, how do you want to manage the time? Because I know I just wanted to give everybody an update on my clinical trials and so on. How do you want to manage that?
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, I can go back and go through my history if necessary, but let me just start with where I am currently. I completed last year, or I guess it was between it was like March of last year and August was actually my treatments. I completed a clinical trial, which was using a PSMA, basically it was a lutetium PSMA process, but this clinical trial used a slightly different molecule and also used iodine-131 rather than lutetium. It seemed to, while I was on it, after having, let me see real quick, I had 3 doses of it, and it seemed to have worked pretty well to bring my PSA down from around 6 down to around 2, and then over a period of time over the year after that, it started, or at least between August of last year and March, it started to creep back up. So therefore, the next step was we did I did 4 treatments of actually I did 6 treatments of carboxytaxel between March and June of this year. And it was clear that, my PSA continued to rise. It's around 20 now, that the carboxytaxel in itself was not being, along with abiraterone, excuse me, no, just the carboxytaxel alone, that it was not being that effective. So I'm now at the point where I'll be making some decisions over the next month it seems that kind of the next steps, we're going to wait and see a little bit of what happens with my PSA. I'll mention I just did have a scan, and the best way to describe that scan is I have a couple of additional lesion sites. My major lesions that I have, 3 or 4 of them, all bone related, have grown somewhat. At the same time, my overall cancer burden is considered to be modest at, in kind of the moderate range. And so one thing would be to do the radium treatment. They're hesitant to start that because I have no bone pain, and they tend to kind of hold that to people who have bone pain. Another thing, which in early August, I'll be meeting with a team at the University of Chicago regarding a CAR-T study. That looks like it's a clinical trial. It looks like a very promising sort of technology. The big challenge with it is even in the study at the University of Chicago, they've already had one treatment-related fatality. And so, the question is, with me, with my having a modest burden, do I go with a high risk, high reward sort of clinical trial, or do we wait and see what happens a little bit, a month or two, and then go with the radium 223? I also am eligible, if I would like, to do the lutetium treatment. The question is that because I've already done the clinical trial with the PSMA, although they are different, one's FDA approved, one's a clinical trial, the question is the overall technology that much different that you would expect very different results?
So
Mark,
in the interest of time, Mark, I'd like to ask Dennis McGuire to comment on that, because he has a very similar experience to you, although it was twice with lutetium. Dennis, you want to tell Mark about what you did and what your results have been?
Sure. I've been on lutetium for 17 months. The first one was a trial at the University of Wisconsin. And then I took 6 months. I responded very well to that trial. And then I took 6 months off and started the second one through the expanded access program at the University of Chicago. And I've done 5 treatments and responded well to that also. When I started at Chicago, my PSA was 300, and it's now at 3.5 with very limited side effects.
And your doctor there is at U of C?
I'm drawing a blank. It's
Schmolovitz or Stadler or Olson or?
No.
Shmulevitz?
No.
I'm drawing a blank.
Hold on, Dennis, and I'll tell you, because it's one of the other doctors that we don't usually
So you've been very happy with that approach. Now, do you have? I assume you have metastatic disease, and how many lesions did you have before you started?
Yes, widespread lymph node disease. Probably too many to count.
Okay.
So I can't give you a number.
What's been your PSA? What's been your
doctor? The doctor was Dr. Patniak.
Okay. Now, what was your PSMA PET results, your scans? How's that been?
Yeah, I was very PSMA avid.
I mean, but when you did additional scans, have your lesions resolved, or have they shrunk, or do you have lots of
After the first round of lutetium, the lesions definitely got smaller.
Okay.
So Mark, we've been trying to gather more information on rechallenging with lutetium. We've had a couple of people that have used radionuclides other than lutetium the first time, and then they followed up with lutetium. And we've had people like Dennis, who had different types of dose of the lutetium, maybe even a different ligand, and then they came back and they challenged a second time. We asked the question in the webinar last week about rechallenging, and we've asked AAA about rechallenging. The database of information is not that strong, although the folks in Australia told us that over 12 months that they've had folks that they have given follow-up doses after about 12 months, and they've gotten good results. And to date, they see no safety issues with rechallenging.
Okay.
And then there was a guy, the doctor from Germany said he's about to start a trial with rechallenging. I think Shmulewicz would be on top of what's going on with the rechallenging, and you may well be a good candidate for rechallenging.
Rick,
and I think if it was me, that's where I'd start. Go ahead.
Rick, I wouldn't even call it a rechallenge.
No.
Simply because he didn't have the same ligand or the same radionuclide.
Right.
And in my mind, the fact that there's a different ligand attached to lutetium may mean that it's a better linker and might actually target more than the clinical trial which you went through. So I wouldn't even call it a rechallenge. I would say this is a different this is a different radioactive therapy, just like radium-223 is going to be a different nucleotide targeting a different mechanism.
Right. And the consensus, Mark, said that you could follow radium-223 after lutetium. So, and they're doing a trial with both of them right now, but there is a consensus opinion that you can follow radium after lutetium. So I think Herb makes a great point. And I think that my discussion with Dr. Shmulewicz would be, why don't we try? I mean, Dennis got quite a bit of lutetium the first time around. He had a good result, but he didn't have a great result. The second time around, he's gotten a great result.
Good ideas. Thank you.
Mark, just a note on the radium. They will not give it to you if you have positive lymph nodes. It's strictly for bone mets.
That's all I have is bone mets.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, not good, but you're eligible.
I know there's no celebration, but yeah, I know.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
All right.
Bill,
So Rick, I'm going to turn it over to you, Rick. I keep getting a poor internet connection notice here. I'm probably going to lose me. Do you have the names? You know who
Yeah,
needs
no, we'll manage. I can work off what I'm seeing on the screen. And we have
just to let you know, Henry, he may have texted me privately. Henry also wanted some time.
Right. George Denyon came on and left because of his thing. Henry, why don't you grab your moment right now? We've still got about 7 to 10 minutes, and your question's a good one. So go for it, man.
Everyone say hello to Stacy first.
Hi.
All right. No time for jocularity. I don't want Rick to get mad at me.
Okay.
All right. So I was Gleason 9 at diagnosis, prostatectomy, abiraterone, and ADT started in November of last year. The prostatectomy was in September of last year. 8 of 27 nodes positive. No other known metastases, but no PSMA imaging. 40 sessions of IMRT at Dana-Farber, January 16 through March 16 of this year. My PSA has remained undetectable, which less than 0.01 is what I've heard. I've been getting it monthly. That is my PSA recheck that I took last month off. Here's the question. Thanks to y'all and Rick getting me hooked up with Dr. E out in Houston. She got a Foundation 1 report on one of my nodes, and there's no microsatellite instability. It's stable. The tumor mutational burden is low. The chromosomal abnormalities were PTEN deletion and SPOP deletion. So as I understand from my research and from Dr. E, there is no, I'm not a candidate currently for currently available immunotherapy, and the PTEN deletion is thought to confer abiraterone resistance, which is working for me. That, the radiation, the surgery, and the ADT are working so far. My question is this: would you guys try to be finding a phase 1 clinical trial for, you know, my I presumably have micrometastases. I'm 56.
No, you're 55.
No, I just turned 56.
You just turned 55.
All right, I just turned 55, my wife says. So do I just, you know, here's the bottom line. Do I keep riding the abiraterone ADT horse? It's, from what I've read, it's too late to do docetaxel. If I was going to do that, I should have done it at the very beginning. So do I just keep riding this horse until I become treatment resistant, or do I try to go somewhere that's, you know, trying to figure out how to attack the PTEN deletion? Thanks.
So first of all, I want to say it's great to hear Stacy back in that saddle and pushing you along. We love it. How are you, Stacy?
I'm great, but I'm glasses half full and I'm trying to fill his cup, and he's glasses half empty all the time.
She's always cracking the whip on me, Rick.
Yeah. So the second thing I'd like to say, I'd like to ask you, and I have a couple of comments on PTEN, is what does Dr. E say you should do?
She wants me to get germline testing. She got a kit sent to me, which I've got to spit in the vial and send it back, right. and then see. So she didn't. All she said was, look, SPOP maybe not so bad. PTEN may confer treatment resistance to abiraterone, but so far your PSA's good and keep on rolling.
So I haven't talked to E about this, but there are a bunch of trials out there trying to address PTEN, but we don't really have anything right now. And I'd love to know what she thinks about these trials. Some of the trials are for castrate sensitive men, which you are, some are for castrate resistant. But if you pull up the email, my reminder from this week, it talks about 2 drugs, capivasertib and ipatasertib, and it lists 13 clinical trials regarding PTEN.
Okay.
Now, I personally am not a great fan of trials until you really have exhausted most of the standards of care. And like you say, you haven't done docetaxel yet. And I trust Dr. E well enough that I'd be asking her, should we stay where we are? Should we do docetaxel now? Are these trials anything worth looking at? Be sure to look at those trials. I haven't had a chance to discuss those trials with Herb or Len, so I don't, or Dr. John, so I don't know what the Brains Trust thinks of them. But what I do know is we are on the move in trying to find something that addresses PTEN. It's on the radar of a lot of research people right now.
Okay.
So I want to get, before we have to jump off, I'd like to get some response on the PTEN issue from anyone else who's on the call. And anybody have anything to say about PTEN or what I wrote in the reminder? It looks like we lost Herb, and we just lost Herb. I think he is, and Len's gone. So
Well, that's okay. I'll check. I'll read those, and I'll visit with Dr. Eden, and I'll report back to y'all.
That'd be great, because I'd love to know what he thinks about these. There are 13 clinical trials that I came up with on this list. Some of them are not relevant.
Okay.
You might be, and I'd love to know whether she thinks that there's any legs. There was one really interesting thing that came up on that P10 list, and I have no idea why it was there.
I'll look at all of them, but I just wanted to thank you and thank everybody for, you know, this resource has just been amazing. So thank you. And Len, thanks for hooking me up. Rick, thanks for letting me in.
It's a pleasure. I just want to say this one trial that caught my eye, which I don't know what the relevance is to P10, was for something called oligoMx, which is a pill form of sulforaphane, which is what we find in cruciferous veggies. And there's somebody doing a trial, and Henry, if you can figure out why they included this on the in the P10 list, it may be that P10's particularly responsive to broccoli. So Stacy, keep giving him the broccoli until he turns green. Okay.
Yes.
We actually love it. We love roasted broccoli all the time. Thanks. Thanks, Rick.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Kevin Bonasco, I don't know if you're with us or you're not with us. We tried to get to you. Anybody? Oh, Kevin, he's heard his phone. My phone is working properly. No one is able to hear me. Okay, Kevin, I can't read that at the same time as talking, but I will check it out and we'll get to you next week. Just come on next week and try and join us with the phone. The meeting next week is on the 1st, August 1st, Monday, August 1st. I guess I'm in the chair. So anybody have anything else urgently? If not, we'll close out the room so the multiple sclerosis folks can come in.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay.
Thanks, Rick.
All right. Oh, one thing, guys, one thing. And this is really great news, and it's hot off the press. For those of you who have been attending the Speaking Freely group, which is getting better and better, we will be taking it to twice a month. So if you haven't been attending it, hopefully it'll be on a night when you can attend it and try it, because people like it. They've come back and asked us to expand it. And David Muslin and Dr. John have agreed to add themselves to the moderators list. So
it was on a bad night this month, the January 6th hearings. Great competition.
Well, you do what I did, which is you watch them afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not, you know, and you can cover and you can replay anything you missed the first time. Okay, guys, take care. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Be well, everybody.
Bye.